Better than being elected governor of Florida is being elected twice in 2 weeks.
It's going to be exciting to go to Washington. I'm a business guy. I'm going to bring a outsider perspective like I did to Tallahassee.
Tensions growing in Tijuana between the thousands of migrants arriving on that caravan and the people who live there.
If you live in a house, you have walls, you have doors, because we don't want to let just anybody go into our house.
Now we hear the people in Tijuana saying that there are gang members, that they are concerned about wages being depressed.
I think some of our democratic freedoms have been under attack.
Like what? We just had an election where we switched power in the House. Democracy is at work. People are voting and we're in record numbers.
A big round of applause to Dan Crenshaw for finally calling people out on it.
His first ever Cup Series championship. It's Joey Logano who wins.
It's a dance party here.
We're up here on the mezzanine level. It's Mezzanine Monday.
Yeah. It is Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, I know it.
Get your cookbook. Get your Steve Doocy cookbook so you know how to make a good turkey.
Listen, we were all in Florida this weekend.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people who came out, and they're going to make that turkey that we made on Friday here on the show.
Yeah, thanks to everybody that came out and talking about the show and everything like that. So we truly appreciate it, the well of support in Florida, and it was great to get out of the cold for a little while. Yes. But now we're back in normal wintry conditions in November.
It's so hard to pack because you leave New York with a winter coat, you get on the airplane, you step off, it's like 80 degrees.
Yep. That's why I have tearaway pants. I wear shorts at any moment if I
really,
change
that's
climate.
an image we don't need to think about. But here's the thing. We've been here in New York City. What have we been talking about? Florida.
Yep.
Tearaway pants.
We start with the Fox News alert. The ballot chaos in Florida over as the embattled Broward County election supervisor reportedly resigns overnight, although the governor says, I haven't gotten any paperwork from her yet.
Yeah, and when does it take effect? It comes just hours after Senator Bill Nelson finally conceded to Republican Rick Scott in Florida's super tight Senate race.
Okay, well, Griff Jenkins is live in Fort Lauderdale with an update for us all. Hey, Griff.
Hey, guys, now we know the election results. And now we know, according to the Sun Sentinel newspaper, that Dr. Brenda Snipes, the scrutinized election supervisor there in Broward County, has resigned effective January 2nd. But what we don't know is where those ballots are. Remember, she lost 2,040 of them, along with missing some deadlines and inaccurately reporting results. I asked her yesterday about those ballots. Here's what she had to say.
I've never thought the ballots were missing. You know, that's a word we like to tie to ballots. The ballots are intermingled with the other page ones.
Not sure how they intermingle and yet are still missing. Nevertheless, we've reached out to her on her cell phone by text and phone call. Hadn't heard back. Meanwhile, the big news over the weekend, the concession. Bill Nelson, after 18 years in the Senate, conceding in a video statement to now Senator-elect Rick Scott. Guys?
All right. And Griff, just to recount, so to speak, initially, when they filed their report, Broward County, on election night, they filed it early, but then on the machine recount, they filed it 2 minutes late. And then when it came to the hand counting yesterday, were they early or late again?
They were 52 minutes early getting in their numbers to Tallahassee, but just to complicate it and show you how Broward works, the hand recount was the first set of numbers because the second set of numbers, which had the 2,000 missing ballots, was 2 minutes late, so they had to revert to the original number. Hopefully they'll straighten that out when Governor-elect Ron DeSantis appoints somebody new. By the way, former Governor Jeb Bush put Snipes in office in 2003 because the woman before her, Mary Oliphant, was the problem.
Right. And just one final question. What about the missing 2,000 ballots in that building? Are they going to look for it, or it's just like, yeah, we can't find them? It's done.
For all we know, they're in Davy Jones' locker in the ocean behind me. Guys?
Well, let's hope not. All right.
How do you lose 2,000 ballots?
Griff Jenkins live along A1A in Fort Lauderdale, right there at the beach.
Right. Well, Rick Scott was the governor. He's now the senator.
Still is.
Senator-elect. Still is. Yes, you're right. And now he is the senator-elect. He was on our show earlier, and he was talking about how frustrating the election process has been to watch. Listen.
It was very frustrating. When I announced we'd won that Tuesday night, we were up 57,000 votes, and they just kept finding ballots. And so that's why I'm thankful for a lot of people that brought light to this to make sure we stop this. And we've got to do everything we can to make sure these elections are free and fair. We passed very historic legislation to try to make sure there wasn't any fraud, make sure people had the right to vote, but make sure we didn't have fraud. What's frustrating is these supervisor elections just didn't comply with the law.
Did not comply, and that's why perhaps she decided she was going to start spending more time with her family. Ron DeSantis, the senator, the governor.
My sense is she was spending time elsewhere doing everything.
That's what they said. She wants to spend more time with her family. That's one of the reasons she's leaving. Ron DeSantis was with us, and he said it's probably a good thing that she called it quits.
Obviously, we're going to have to address some of the problems with the election administration in places like Broward and Palm Beach County. I think it's good that Brenda Snipes has submitted her resignation. There was no way as governor that I was going to let her preside over another election down there after all the problems that they had. So we had 65 counties do a good job. We had 2 that dropped the ball. We want to make sure all 67 counties do these elections in a fair way.
I think we all want that.
Yeah, eventually, I guess Florida will get there. They have 65 who did it fair. We just got to get to 67. Here's hoping next time we got it.
Well, it's one thing to have all these problems, 1 year, but then they keep having these problems in that same area. So they got to get it right this time.
There were a dozen, I was reading this morning, there were something like a dozen different instances of problems with the Broward County elections.
It's just not fair to the voters.
Before this election. All right. Meanwhile, speaking of voters, a lot of voters went to the polls concerned about immigration. And as you remember, in the run-up to the midterms, there was that caravan that was sneaking its way from Honduras and Guatemala up through Mexico. Well, now, as you can see, thousands have massed in Tijuana, Mexico, which is just south of San Diego. And as it turns out, there are a lot of protesters who are Mexicans who do not like this, what at least one person referred to as an invasion.
They are coming. They are gangs. They are bad people.
Our government has not taken control of these, what we call invasions. If you live in a house, you have walls, you have doors, you have gates. And so we do that because we don't want to let just anybody go into our house. And I consider this country my house on a larger scale, and we should control our borders.
Lo que dijo Donald Trump es verdad. Es una invasión.
He's yelling what Donald Trump said is true. This is an invasion. Those are the residents that live there that are upset.
Right. The people of Tijuana, in fact, the mayor of Tijuana, Mexico, just stated this, that the city is ill. And in fact, I haven't memorized
this.
So I'll need the prompter. Yeah, this is from the president's tweet. Since I haven't committed to memory, I'm going to need the prompter to move forward. There we go. The mayor of Mexico just stated that the city is ill-prepared to handle this many migrants. The backlog could last 6 months. Likewise, the U.S. is ill-prepared for the invasion and will not stand for it. They are causing crime and big problems with Mexico. Go home. Some of those clustered went in there to help out are American lawyers volunteering. They showed up there to say, hey, listen, these are your rights. This is what you can do. What they're finding out is the president's new move of pushing everyone to a port of entry is making them sign in and get in line. And it's a huge line. The hope is the word will get out that you're not getting in.
Right.
So we could do an orderly process.
Well, there are 3,000, mostly Hondurans, that are there right now. And some folks in the government are saying they're expecting it to swell up to 10,000. And our U.S. border inspectors are processing about 100 asylum claims a day. So they're anticipating that those folks are going to be in Tijuana for months. Some are saying 6 months, some are saying longer.
That is, if they are waiting for asylum. And to Brian's point, talking about the lawyers, these volunteers who are just south of the border talking to the migrants, they're telling them how exactly to effectively apply for asylum. Meanwhile, Brian was interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Alan West a little while ago.
I was busy.
And you were very
talking,
busy.
Interviewing.
No kidding. And the colonel had this observation. The reason they went from Guatemala and Honduras way out to the west coast of Mexico is because of California's sanctuary status. Listen to this.
The interesting thing is that this caravan aimed toward Tijuana because why? California is a sanctuary state for illegal immigration, and I'm sure that's where they're looking to cross into. This is one of the reasons why we need to have the military down there along the border, not to be on the front line against some of the migrants or some of the illegal immigrants, but to start building better facilities down there so that we don't have to release people into the society. We need to have them down there to backfill our United States Border Patrol agents so that we can get those resources and their capability right up front to stem this flow.
And it's a magnet.
And didn't the president say something like it's not catch and release now, it's catch and detain?
Yeah.
And so that's the facility he's talking about. If you catch somebody, keep them right there so you don't have to release them into the population of the United States until they get their adjudication.
Shelters are full down there. Some people are now, they've opened up this city sports complex and they're letting people, the migrants, live there and sleep on the baseball fields and underneath the bleachers.
For those people who say, well, President Trump is looking to do well in the midterm elections, so he's trying to make the caravan a big deal and use terms like invasion. That's what they're using in Tijuana, and that's just a fraction or a percentage of the caravan coming this way. They might all be great people. There's just a way to get into this country. Meanwhile, we've all gotten to know Dan Crenshaw over the last few weeks, ever since SNL made him a punching bag in one of their jokes and then apologized the following week. This weekend, he was invited on one of the Sunday shows.
He was, and he listened to what the panel was talking about how the President Trump is undermining democracy with his attacks on the press. And the key word there, attacks. And this is what Dan Crenshaw had in response.
I always ask the question, like what? You know, like, what is he undermining exactly? You know, what democratic freedoms have been undermined? We just had an election where we switched power in the House. Democracy is at work. But just kind of this broad brush criticism that the president is somehow undermining our democracy. I always wonder, like, what exactly we're talking about. How is that an attack on the press, though?
Because it's literally an attack on the press.
I've literally been attacked, so let's choose our words carefully.
Yeah, here's a guy who lost his eye in an attack, an IED explosion, and he says, don't call it an attack. Be careful about the words. He said, if you have a problem with the president's style, I can understand that. But attack, be careful.
He said what you're saying, these aren't attacks. It shouldn't be, you're saying that the president's attacking, the president's undermining. He said, no, you just have a disagreement with the policy, and that's a completely different thing.
Yeah, meanwhile, at 12 minutes after the hour, let me tell you what's coming up next. Congressman Elijah Cummings, who's soon to be chairman perhaps, will soon take over the House Oversight Committee. His first priority, make the special counsel findings public. Current White House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy is live here to react. Plus,
Willie Robertson's going to join us right here on the Curvy Couch.
There he is.
Coming up next.
He's got a new book.
It's such a great message, a great American story. It starts with, but it's already causing some infighting among House Democrats. Our next guest says this is just a preview of some problems for presumed Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Joining us now is Senior Fellow at the National Taxpayers Union, Maddie Doppler. Maddie, first off, are they going to just make it harder to increase your taxes? Is that what we're trying to undo what the Republicans did to make it harder to increase your taxes?
Well, Brian, at the core of the debate here are the House rules. Now, normally these are just technical changes that govern how the House does business, but the majority party gets to set those rules. So House Republicans made it more difficult to raise all taxes. And the question now for Democrats is whether or not they repeal that rule or they replace it with a rule that allows them to raise taxes on wealthy earners. And I think that this really indicates one thing. When Democrats say they want to raise taxes on the rich, they don't mean it. They mean they want to raise taxes on everyone, because right now, Nancy Pelosi is saying she has the politically salient idea to change that rule so just taxes could be raised on upper income earners. And the progressive wing of her party is saying that simply isn't enough. They want full-scale repeal of that rule so they can raise taxes on everyone.
But some of those Democrats who maybe won in Orange County, California, or in Texas, the last thing they want to do, they were in as moderates, is say go and raise taxes. So
That's exactly right.
She might have a mini Freedom Caucus issue on her hands.
I think this absolutely indicates the challenges that presumptive Speaker Pelosi has in front of her. You know, she has had years of experience making Democrats walk the plank on politically toxic votes. But when it comes to tax increases, Democrats typically have really decided to campaign on raising taxes rather than voting to actually raise taxes. Now, for months, Pelosi has been unequivocal. She says she wants to repeal the tax cuts that were passed into law last year. What this indicates, though, moving forward is that progressive Democrats in that party now really want to hold her feet to the fire and force her to make good on that promise. That's going to create problems for Democrats who typically talk a big game on taxes but are refusing to follow them up with real votes.
What's kind of interesting is we saw that big announcement last week about a crime bill that could be taken up in the lame duck session. There's pressure to do it. So I said to myself, could we have a year in which they try to do some things together and then in 2019 separate because they have to go win in 2020? Are you saying that it's going to be, do your sources say friction right away? Nothing on immigration?
Brian, I think that the next few weeks are crucial. They will indicate whether or not Democrats are actually willing to govern. We've got a couple big fights coming ahead of us. The House rules are just one of them, but of course a big funding fight with funding expiring at the first week in December. If Democrats decide to actually put ideas forward to allow for this country to move forward, maybe there will be opportunity for compromise. There certainly are opportunities for that, but Democrats are the ones who hold the keys, and they need to indicate they're serious about that.
The president said I might shut down the government if I don't get the wall. A lot of his problems with Republicans. I mean, it's Mitch McConnell's the one who's not really into the wall.
Republicans typically have had a lot of leverage in these spending fights, so they need to work together in order to accomplish the prerogatives that Americans want them to, that sent them to Congress to accomplish. There's a lot of space left in the year for them to have those negotiations, but I really think it's important for Republicans to unite on their priorities to force Democrats to really start to take a hard look at what they're going to do when they take control of the chamber next year.
Absolutely. Maddie, thanks so much. Great insight.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, coming up straight ahead, we have South Carolina Congressman. He's going to be retiring soon, Trey Gowdy. What's he doing next? And what's he here for? I cannot wait to tell you. And one school is battling bullying by banning designer coats. Willie Robertson joins us on the couch to talk about coats, liners, gum, entrepreneurs.
Good morning and welcome back. We have a Fox News alert. At least 80 people are dead and nearly 1,000 still missing in California's devastating wildfires. A candlelight vigil held in Northern California to honor the 77 victims of the Camp Fire. Rain in the forecast could help get the flames under control, but there's new fears of mudslides. We will have a live report on the ground in Malibu in just a few minutes. Passengers fear for their lives when an elevator plunges 84 floors, the car dropping from the 95th to the 11th floor in Chicago's iconic Hancock skyscraper.
Yeah, at the beginning, I believed that we were going to die when we were falling down.
It was a very long ride until we stopped.
Wow, frightening. It took 3 hours for rescue crews to break through a brick wall and get the 6 passengers out safely. Officials reportedly blame the incident on a broken hoist rope. And a fresh load of supplies just arriving at the International Space Station. The supply ship bringing more than 3 tons of cargo, including science gear, spacewalk equipment, and even ice cream. The space station crew will unload the cargo ship and repack it with trash before releasing it in February. Don't leave any ice cream left behind. Ainsley?
I think that's the freeze-dried kind. Just saying.
Well, one school is battling bullying by banning pricey designer coats to prevent the poorer students from feeling bad.
Our next guest knows all about signature coats. His camo gear put him in his Duck Dynasty.
He's so into fashion.
But if he argues if kids want something bad enough, they're going to work for it.
Yep, here to explain his former Duck Dynasty star, turned great person, author of new book, American Entrepreneur.
Wasn't a good person.
Wait a minute, when did I turn great person?
I got to stick to the prompter.
Come on, man.
American Entrepreneur. The book is now out today. It is awesome. It gives people a template for how you got your business instinct and with the entrepreneur spirit within us. But what do you do when the person next to you is richer than you and has nicer clothes than you, Willie? Do you make them dress down?
No, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. I mean, we grew up really poor.
Right.
So it gave us something to push for. That's why I started my businesses early, selling my gum and singing. And I was trying to make money. I was trying to, trying to make some money so I could buy. For me, it was tennis shoes. It wasn't fancy coats.
So you don't even understand the mindset of stop making kids feel bad because they don't have money.
When does that stop? Like, everything has a price tag. So if you want to, if you don't want to wear the nice fancy coat, wear something less. Although we always had down coats. We had Uncle Si's old army jackets. He would give them to us, so it had our name on it and had the goose feather. Yeah, I mean.
Well, these coats, I mean, some of them are $1,000. Do you think kids should have that kind of thing? I mean, remember when we were growing up, the expensive jeans were like $50, and now they're $300, and every kid has them.
They are? We didn't have, yeah, we didn't grow up that way, so. We had, my mom wouldn't even buy me the nice parachute pants.
Well,
I had like the cheap version that looked like a garbage bag, and the zippers didn't work. And
yeah, well, so you come from, very modest means, and before you had the bubble gum, because famously your dad, we know, came up with the duck call, and that changed everybody's lives. But when you were 5, You were trading and selling all sorts of stuff. You say in 5th grade, I was constantly selling and trading stuff. We were so poor, I didn't have an allowance. I needed cash. I had a pretty productive worm farm, and I sold bait worms.
Were you ever in the worm business?
Not really.
It's a real good business, but it's labor intensive. And it takes forever to check out because you have to, each worm has to be grabbed. Right. So selling the bubble gum, I ended up with this case of bubble gum, and selling that for 50 cents a piece was a way better business. And I was rolling. I was making hundreds of dollars, and the principal shut me down.
Wow. And also, you also were human jukebox on the bus, right?
I was, yeah. You stuck a quarter in, I mechanically dropped it in, and I would get up and sing.
Let's see what that's like. Let's see, like.
Boom. Oh, well. Boom, 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 boom. Standing in the rain with his head hung low. Couldn't get a ticket. It was a sold-out show. That's
good. That's great.
Good job.
Jukebox hero.
Well, give him a quarter.
Right. I wish I had change.
All right, so Willie, tell us about your book. Why'd you write it? American Entrepreneur.
Well, coming from those stories and learning about how people do business, like our odd business, Abduct Calls, wanted to collect really all the stories, or a lot of the stories in America about people who did these great things, with business, and look at their backgrounds. And it was interesting to me. Some were rich, some were poor, and so we go all the way back to when America started, bring it all the way up to now, and a lot of them made mistakes, and so you keep going. So I'm hoping people, not that it's just interesting, but I hope people are inspired and say, hey, I need to jump in there and do what I've always wanted to do. That's probably the most questions I've been asked since Duck Dynasty. I'm starting this business. How did y'all do it?
But the key is there are so many people out there watching right now. They've got a great idea, but somehow it doesn't translate into working.
And the main trait that they had was they were hard workers and had a great work ethic. And so I run to a lot of people today, they want it now, and they're like, just like our business, they're like, well, how was it to be an overnight success? And I'm like, well, Dad started in 1972. It took about 40 years. It wasn't, so there was a lot of contentment there. We had to be patient and keep working. And
what was the big break for you?
Well, it just kept going. Yeah, it was actually when we got in Walmart stores. Because we put our phone number on the back of it, it shipped all over the country, and people started calling us for more products.
Wow!
So it was like that was our whole marketing, and that we started getting calls from when I was 10 years old. We'd answer the phone, Duck Commander.
Right.
And we would take the orders, we'd write them down, but really that spread us out across the nation.
So this could be inspirational for a lot of people, and don't get so caught up in the end game. You just got to find it. You got to stick with it, have an idea, follow it through, and understand there's a lot of successful people. The first idea didn't necessarily hit. Sometimes you got to keep on reinventing yourself.
A lot of times they didn't hit. I mean, these guys they went bankrupt, and of course, someone went to debtor's prison. Thank goodness that's not there. If you made a mistake, you went to jail. So bad business move, you went to jail. But we chronicle all those things. And some of the stories are just incredible. Frederick Tudor selling ice. He shipped ice from Boston to India. And it stayed ice. Isn't that amazing? Every time I think about that, just how big that is, and how they got loans, and how they just kept going, and even at older ages, they came in their 50s and 60s and 70s some, and started these great businesses.
Read all about it. American Entrepreneur. Willie Robinson. Excellent. Always great to see you.
So always got a good idea, and we'll talk to you on radio in a little while.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Congressman Elijah Cummings will soon take over the House Oversight Committee. His first priority, make the special counsels.
All right, the new Congress is coming in January. Will they be able to work out America's problems? Let's bring in Republican Congressman currently, Trey Gowdy. He's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, member of the Judiciary Committee on the House as well.
From the great state of South Carolina.
Yeah, that's right, and he will be retiring. Congressman, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all?
We're doing okay. What do you make of the news that Congressman Elijah Cummings of the great state of Maryland, who is expected to chair what you're doing right now, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, he has suggested that when Mueller's findings come out, they don't necessarily have to become public. However, he would do everything he could to make sure that does happen. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know what he means by everything. Does that mean divulge classified information? Does it mean divulge grand jury material? I hope not. I also find it ironic. I spent 2 years battling with Elijah, who wanted to keep lots of things secret. And I spent 2 years battling with Adam Schiff, who didn't want anyone to know about the dossier or Fusion GPS or the FISA process. So if they have this newfound embrace of transparency, that's good, but it would be newfound.
How do you feel about Mark Whitaker, acting director? Are you Matt Whitaker? Do you feel okay with that? Do you feel that that's constitutional? Because most Democrats have a huge problem with it.
It's an open legal question. There are good arguments on both sides, but he is the acting attorney general up to and including the time the Supreme Court says otherwise. I'm a lot more interested in who the next real attorney general is going to be and whether that woman and man can do the very difficult task of advancing the president's policy and legislative initiatives while working for a blindfolded woman and having the independence necessary to run our nation's largest law enforcement agency.
All right. Well, in other news, House Republicans are saying they're going to subpoena James Comey and Loretta Lynch. And Comey tweeted this out. He said, House Republicans can ask me anything they want, but I want the American people to watch. So let's have a public hearing. Truth is best served by transparency. Let me know when is convenient. Your thoughts?
Jim Comey really said truth is best served by transparency. Did he interview Hillary Clinton in public? Did he interview George Papadopoulos in public? Did he interview Michael Flynn in public? Did he interview Uma Abedin, Cheryl Mills? Has the FBI ever conducted an interview in public? And has the FBI ever conducted an interview where you were limited to 5 minutes, which is what happens in congressional hearings? Ainsley, the last time I saw Jim Comey in a public congressional hearing, almost 100 times he said, I can't answer in this setting. So why in the world would he want to go back to a setting where he knows he can't answer all the questions? I'm sure he only wants me to have 5 minutes. I'm sure of that. Yeah. But I need more than 5 minutes. I have 37 pages of questions for Rod Rosenstein. So imagine how many questions I have for Jim Comey, and I can't do it in 5 minutes.
Mr. Gowdy, why wasn't James Comey subpoenaed earlier? Because now it looks like it's just waiting for the Democrats to take over. And how supportive has Kevin McCarthy been of the whole process?
Kevin McCarthy?
Kevin McCarthy.
Oh, fantastically supportive. I mean, Chairman Goodlatte is the chairman of Judiciary. Yes. Kevin McCarthy has been fantastic. So has Paul Ryan. In fact, Paul has rolled up his sleeves and gotten involved with the Department of Justice when they've tried to prevent us from getting information. The natural chronology of investigations is you interview everyone up to a certain point, and then you save the Jim Comeys and the Loretta Lynches and the Sally Yates for the end. That's how you naturally work investigations. Well, we're at the end. We're at the end because the Democrats aren't going to do anything in 2019. And quite frankly, we're also at the end. We've interviewed a lot of witnesses between House Intel and Judiciary, and it's time to bring in Comey and Lynch. But it is not time to do it in a carnival freak show atmosphere where my colleagues, some of whom can't question their way out of a one-story parking garage. I mean, I got colleagues that just aren't good at asking questions. So why would we do that setting where Comey's going to say he can't answer and all you get is 5 minutes? I mean, the FBI doesn't do that, so why should Congress do it?
And just real quick, so what's going to happen? Is he coming in? You doing this in a lame duck session?
Oh, he's coming, whether he wants to or not. And Bob Goodlatte's going to set the terms, not Jim Comey.
Okay.
I got his tweet. He wants to do it in public. He wants to sell more books. He wants to be more famous. But Congress is going to decide how we can best advance the fact-finding and the truth, and that is not in 5-minute increments, and it is not in a setting where he can answer, I can't answer in this setting like he's done almost 100 times.
All right. And Congressman, tell us about, I know you are a co-sponsor of a bill to posthumously award the Congressional Gold Medal to the Benghazi heroes, the 4 men who died that day on September the 11th. A couple of years ago, Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Glenn Doherty, and Tyrone Woods. Why is this important to you now?
Well, everything you and I have discussed this morning, reasonable minds can differ, and they do differ. But on the heroism and the patriotism and the service and the sacrifice of those 4 men, Congress is unified. We can debate the decisions made in Washington on September 11th and 12th of 2012. But the actions taken in Libya were heroic, and they deserve to be recognized with Congress's highest award, and that's bipartisan and it's apolitical, which is why you have Elijah Cummings and I agreeing in full force that these 4 men ought to be recognized by our country.
So it definitely will happen.
I hope so. There's no reason for it not to. I don't know of anyone opposed to it. We just need to make it a priority.
Now, Trey Gowdy, I understand you're going to be unemployed soon on your own. You're going to be retired. So would you accept the Attorney General's job if the president asked? Would you interview it if he calls you? Interview for if he calls you?
Those are two separate questions. I would love to talk to the president about the qualities I think are important in the next Attorney General. I'm really excited about what I'm going to do next, and it's in South Carolina. But I would love the chance to advocate for someone like a John Ratcliffe or like a Susan Brooks or someone who can do that very difficult task of advancing the president's legislative initiatives while maintaining the independence of the Department of Justice. I mean, respect for the rule of law is the foundation of our country, and we need a Department of Justice that is both respected and worthy of respect, and it needs to be depoliticized, and there are certain people that can do it. I've actually never met or talked to the president. I would love for that to change. On the issue of who best to represent that department, I don't think it's me, but I would love to weigh in on who I think it could be.
Okay, Dick Cheney said the same thing. He ended up vice president.
I don't think it'll happen twice. He can do better than me, and I'm really excited about the folks I'm going to be working for come January.
All right, Trey Gowdy, who has never met the president, and now he's got a whole new chapter ahead of him. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning. And a story we're following in some insane video. So there's a race car driver who loses control, flying through the air and then slamming into a barrier at 170 miles per hour. Stop what you're doing and watch this. Isn't that scary? That is driver Sophia Flores crashing on the Formula 3 course in China. The German teen who fractured her spine tweeting in part, quote, "Just wanted to let everybody know that I am fine." 5 other people were